Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We are going to wait another minute for more people to log in, and once that happens, we will kick the webinar off. Hello, everyone. My name is Titus Kapilnian, and I'm the Director of Marketing at DigitalGenius, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Today, we're going to talk about AI is my friend, a practical view for contact centers, and the webinar will be presented by Mikhail Naumov, the co-founder and Chief Strategy Officer of DigitalGenius.
Thank you, Titus. It's Mikhail here. Just to confirm, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Wonderful. So, hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you're dialing in from. Thank you very much for joining this call. We're going to keep it pretty fast-paced here. We're going to focus on some practical applications of machine learning, deep learning, and AI inside the contact center. We're going to spend about a half an hour, 40 minutes sharing the insights we've gathered over the last 3.5 years of deploying these practical applications of AI into customer service operations. And we're going to leave some time and some room for Q&A. You'll be able to submit your questions through the Bright Talk platform. There's a chat window for you to write those down, and our host Titus is going to read a few of those off, or as many as we can fit, towards the end of the presentation, so we can address your question as well. So please feel free to add your questions to that chat window as we go along. So first and foremost, once again, my name is Mikhail. 3.5 years ago, I was fortunate to be kind of at the early stages of building a company that focused on conversational automation. And going way back in our history, we looked at it as a spectrum of intelligence. On the left side, you had these applications which are quite limited in intelligence, and we normally call them chatbots. This is going back 3.5 years ago, before all of the hype and before chatbots were cool. So back then, we built the original chatbots for companies like BMW, HSBC, Panasonic, and Coca-Cola. These bots were focused primarily on things like marketing new products, supporting customers with their questions, doing employee onboarding, and doing a variety of different use cases inside of the business. And we had this platform which allowed anyone to script their own chatbot without writing any lines of code. This should all sound pretty familiar. I'm sure the folks on the phone right now, you've seen many of these chatbot platforms, especially in the last 6 months. However, going back 3 years, we had some interesting insights from our time building bots. The first insight was that if you focus on too many use cases, the marketing, the sales, the customer service, there's really much more you can achieve if you focus on just one. So a strategic decision was made for us to focus just on customer service. The second insight we learned from the bot building days was that the chatbots we were building were based on a more traditional natural language processing framework, a basic NLP stack, which allowed us to essentially script any chatbot to be able to handle questions. And there were some very clever, sophisticated, processes in place to make sure that you can script a bot that would be right most of the time. And today you see chatbots out there in the wild. They work quite well in limited, narrow use cases, but when it comes to tackling the broad area of customer service and support, it really is not appropriate to trust that entire end-to-end experience to a chatbot, especially if it's based on rules. Nevertheless, we learned a ton from this experience in the first 6 months of our company and worked with some fantastic enterprise customers, but figured that we really should be moving in the direction of pure machine learning, or more specifically, deep learning. To accomplish this, we were able to recruit an entire team of researchers coming from organizations like Microsoft and universities like Cambridge and Oxford. These folks are PhDs in machine learning, mathematics, and physics in some cases. And what they do is they focus on this whole research aspect of AI. On the top of the spectrum, you see, we call that Hollywood AI because that's what this focuses on the type of things you see portrayed in movies like Ex Machina and others that are talking about machines becoming as smart as or smarter than humans in a general sense and one day taking over the world. Well, we're not sure if that day is ever going to come. And what we do know is that from this research, there are a few things that are very practical. And unlike the Hollywood movies, which are very fantasy-focused, some of the research can actually be applied in businesses today. Hence, the introduction of a new category that we've been spearheading, which is the practical intelligence. We call it a human plus AI product, where you can combine the best of human and machine intelligence in a seamless experience, in this case to provide amazing experience for customers. And we've highlighted a couple of our early customers here. But the idea is, how do you take everything you learn from the chatbot world and how do you transfer as much of these latest advancements in AI research and put it into a business application that's ready to deploy and ready to create value in the contact center? The reason we really looked at this space and we thought back to how technology has always been transforming the contact center. If you go back, years ago, decades, in order to help somebody with a customer service issue, all you had was an agent or a person, and they had to leave the office, get in their car, drive to somebody's house, and fix their problem physically, manually, and in person. Those I guess, were the good old days, right, when you had a lot of face-to-face interaction with your customers, but the world has changed significantly. And so with the introduction of the new technology of the phone, you can now do customer service via the phone line. You can handle a lot more questions a lot more efficiently. Then we got the computer, and we could do things like email and live chat and mobile messaging and social media, and really the world of customer service kind of started transitioning and evolving, and the scale and the pace at which customers were demanding help was also rapidly increasing. Well, our thesis is that today and into the future, every single agent is going to have their own machine learning algorithm that's going to help them do their job. The machine learning algorithm will learn from the agent. It will learn from the agent's peers. It'll learn from the company and its customers, and eventually enable the agent to provide a higher quality and a higher efficiency of a customer service experience. And that's what DigitalGenius is all about, is building a platform that can enable that. Now, let's take a look at what this is supposed to be all about. Customers are talking to agents, and the idea is that between the two of them, you have a lot of love and you have a lot of engagement and a lot of genuine conversations. That's the idea. You want your well-trained, qualified agents speaking with your wonderful customers that want to reach out to you because they have a question, a problem, or maybe they just want to say thanks. And the idea in the best case scenario is that this conversation is always very positive. However, today in this process, we start introducing certain things that are partially due in part to technology, things like a drop-down menu, or otherwise known as MetaTagging, when every time a customer reaches out to you, before an agent can even answer, they first have to classify this ticket or this email or this case so that they can, for analytics purposes, later on review what are the most common cases. Now, this process is pretty straightforward, but once you start doing it thousands of times a day and 5 times for every message, it really starts taking a drag on your agents. It's a very repetitive process. And some of the love, some of the positivity of this interaction starts to drop. Then you introduce the search function, which is when an agent has to go out there and search their knowledge base and figure out, okay, what is the best answer to this customer's question? Is it a knowledge article I have to use? Is there some kind of approved answer that I have for this? I'm searching all over my knowledge base to try to find this. And over time, we keep widening the gap between the customer and the agent, and that leads to the positivity of this experience dropping over time. And it's kind of inevitable that this happens. The keyboard there is to represent the agent, physically typing the answers every single time, repetitive things over and over. This little diagram is all about third-party systems. For instance, how many times does an agent have to leave their core agent console or their system of record to access a third-party system and to actually make some changes in that system and then bring back information from that third-party system to their main agent console? All of this takes time, and it's very frustrating, and it drives the positivity of this conversation down. And finally, you now have an agent who's expected to talk to multiple customers at the same exact time. And what this does is it really drives its quality and the efficiency down. So our job and our objective is to introduce machine learning to the contact center in such a way that can take over some of this repetitive, mundane experience from the agent side so that the customer and the agent can return to the positive, optimistic relationship that they were meant to have from the beginning. And by introducing our product, DigitalGenius, we hope to take as much of those repetitive things and bring those two back together as much as humanly possible. Instead of replacing the agent, we think about empowering the agent to get back to those high-value, meaningful conversations. Now, there are some main reasons why we're doing this. Let's take a look at reality. Today's customer is expecting more than ever. There's an increasing volume every single day, every month. You're getting hopefully more messages, either because your business is growing, which is good, or because your business is opening up new channels of communication with your customers. The graph on the left is one of our close partners, KLM, Royal Dutch Airlines. They're one of the most innovative and forward-looking customer service operations in the airline business and otherwise. And they've introduced channels like Facebook Messenger to serve their customers with their questions, with their requests. And the day that they opened up this Facebook Messenger channel as a communication option for their customers, what they saw is a significant spike in message volumes. And these message volumes were so overwhelming that they really had to start thinking about how do we handle all of these new inbound messages without sacrificing quality. Because customers are expecting a higher quality, you've got these new channels going on, and inevitably the costs are increasing. So KLM, along with many other companies out there that are seeing this type of trend, have to make decisions. And the decisions are they can either increase their headcount inside of their contact center, they can endeavor to hire more people, outsource to more BPOs, find ways to get more people into the process so they can handle this volume. Or they can implement technology to make their existing team more efficient. And it's always a cost-benefit analysis in this case. So there's technologies out there that could make your existing teams much more efficient in what they do every day and would potentially lead to a better outcome for your operation than if you had to double your headcount overnight. Besides, most of us know that from a budgetary standpoint, doubling headcount is something that's not it's not always possible. So how do we solve this problem? Okay, so this decision, this problem, we try to put the machine to work. We make the machine do things that human agents should not be doing. Things I mentioned previously, like tagging incoming cases and messages, suggesting answers to commonly frequently used questions, collecting basic information from your customer so that an agent doesn't have to waste valuable time collecting follow-up information before they can actually help, and doing things like repetitive question answering and even routing tickets. This way, you have a human agent who is now spending more of their time on the complex tickets, on things like personalization and humor, looking to reduce your customer churn, looking to improve your CSAT scores or your customer satisfaction, and eventually leading to a world where your contact center agents are actually the front line of your brand when it comes to communicating with your customers, and could lead to things like upsell opportunities and creating more value for the business and for your customers. So throughout this process, we've adopted a framework. And just to zoom out, there's a couple of ways that AI companies are being built today. Some of them are pure platforms, which you can go on this platform and you could attempt to script your own chatbot solution or your own ML, machine learning reinforced solution to try to answer your customers' questions. These are usually open source platforms, or they have some sort of fee associated with them, but the bulk of the work is actually placed on your company. So somebody in your business would have to use this platform and would have to script their own chatbot solution over time. And whenever things change in your business, that same person in your company would have to go and administer this tool and continue iterating upon it, because as your business changes, the chatbot has to learn. And unless it has some very sophisticated machine learning capabilities, it's really up to a human person that's managing this thing to actually keep it up to date for you. Now, the other option there with those open source platforms is to hire a system integrator, another third-party company like an Accenture or a smaller boutique that are going to take on the bulk of the work of actually doing the customization and integration of your chatbot tool. That's another avenue that we've seen companies take. It is one that requires additional resources, so you kind of have to know what you're signing up for, but it does benefit if you already have a system integrator in place who's well-versed in the AI landscape. What's interesting is a lot of those system integrators, they already have their AI partners of choice. So if you're reaching out to the likes of Accenture and others, they will likely already recommend you some platforms to use. In our case, we have a slightly different approach. We've focused on building a more off-the-shelf solution which can be implemented in the shortest period of time possible without shifting all the customization and integration work onto your team, onto the teams of our customers. And so the framework that we've developed looks like this. In any contact center, you have human customers that are having conversations with your human agents. And this conversation is usually happening and is stored inside of an agent console. The most popular platforms out there like Salesforce Service Cloud and Zendesk and many others have really perfected the console software to make it really easy, or hopefully really easy, for your agents to talk to your customers. Now, what we do at DigitalGenius is we install our application directly on top of these popular software systems. And by doing so, we have the ability to automatically extract and ingest all the historical customer service transcripts and historical chat logs that have been stored inside of these systems over the course of the last year, 2 years, depending on how long your customer service operation has been up and running. Maybe it's 10 years. And by doing this, instead of scripting anything and using professional services companies to script chatbots, we are automatically training our systems on your real, tangible, historical customer service data. And there are a few advantages to this approach. One, obviously, is the cost. Instead of hiring an outsourced company or having somebody in-house scripting these things, you actually have these transcripts automatically ingested into the platform. And the second thing is, because this relies on historical data, which is a lot more robust than what any human being could possibly sit down and script manually, what you get is a much more resilient model that can make predictions inside of your contact center. So just a minute on the process of ingestion, because this is important to understand. We're using a methodology called deep learning. It's a derivative of machine learning, which is a further derivative of the general term artificial intelligence. Pretty much in the context of the customer service operation, it means taking your historical email transcripts and the chat logs from inside of a contact center and converting them to these mathematical representations of language called word vectors. These word vectors are just these endless decimal point arrays that are representing all of the linguistic conversations that have been happening inside of your contact center. So by converting those language into math, we're able to train a statistical model that can make predictions on new inputs and on new messages that come into your contact center, which I'll show in just a second. Now, to do this, it's not a straightforward process, and when partnering with AI companies or looking into the AI for contact center space, it's important to look under the hood to understand both the software frameworks as well as the hardware solutions that these companies are using. In our case, we're using GPUs from our partners at NVIDIA, who are some of the leaders in the space. These GPUs allow us to ingest massive amounts of historical information in a very rapid pace. So millions of chat logs, which would normally be very slow to ingest, are processed significantly faster thanks to the help of GPU hardware. And once these models are trained, they are integrated directly into the agent console via the app that we installed. So let's take a quick look at what this actually does at the end of the day. We do three things really well. When a new customer comes in with a message, let's say, how can I upgrade my seat for the flight to Dubai? The first thing that happens is our system will analyze this question, and it will automatically predict and pre-fill all of the metadata associated with this question. So these little rows with a green checkbox represent drop-down menus inside, for example, Salesforce, that normally agents have to fill out manually every time a new message comes in. And in some cases, there are some rule-based systems in place, like, hey, if the subject line of an email has the word lost bag, then maybe you can automatically classify it as a lost bag. But mostly those are very rudimentary, very limited rule-based systems. And what we're looking for here is a very dynamic process where all of these fields and drop-down menus can be pre-filled dynamically by the machine learning algorithm for one simple reason. It's been done thousands of times before by your agents. And so by predicting and pre-filling these, we aim to save a significant amount of time that it normally takes for contact center agents to process these messages. We found that by automatically classifying cases and routing those cases as a result of the classification mechanism, we can recover up to a third of the typical average handling time that it takes for agents to handle incoming emails and incoming chats. And that's the first area of value that our agents that use their software have found very helpful, because they no longer have to waste their time clicking and tagging and using drop-down menus, and can instead see what the machine has predicted, determine whether they agree with it, and if they do, just keep going along their way. And if they don't, they can actually change any of the machine's predictions, allowing the machine to learn. So that's number one. We call it predictive case intelligence, otherwise known as automatically predicting all the metadata around the incoming message. The second thing we do well are these things called AI-powered agent prompts. In the same example where a customer asks you a question, let's say via Facebook Messenger as a channel, the system will analyze this question and it will make a prediction as to what is the best answer for this question. And this prediction comes with a confidence score, which is shown to the agents as a prompt. And the agent now has the ability to say, hey, do I agree with this, in which case I'm going to simply approve it, or do I want to personalize it further to make it more friendly or interesting or special for the customer, or do I just want to ignore it? And what we find is that when agents get these messages as suggestions, they both see the question and the answer in front of them at the same time, and they're much more likely to provide a consistent answer significantly faster than they would if they had to search for this thing manually. So by approving or personalizing an AI-suggested prompt, the message goes back to the customer through the agent console that they're using, let's say Zendesk in this case, and the response is sent back to the customer via Facebook Messenger. Now, what also happens is a process called continuous online learning. So with every agent action, every time they approve or personalize or even reject a suggested answer, the machine learns from that. And over time, it becomes stronger and the model becomes better. And this is important to get us to the third thing that we focus on, which is this idea of automation. And automation is what you would normally expect from a basic rule-based scripted chatbot. And as we talked about before, those are very limited to narrow use cases and are kind of difficult to customize and administer. But automation in the context of a true machine learning or a deep learning application means something a little bit different. In order to automate something, we have to tell the machine what level of confidence are we comfortable with for the machine to actually make an automation happen. So in this case, we give this control over to our customers, the people we work with inside contact centers that make that decision. Let's say they want to set their confidence threshold to 95%. What this means is that when a new message comes in, our system will analyze it. And if it knows what the answer is above that threshold, it will automatically respond without troubling any of your agents, without even going to them in the first place. So that email, that chat message will be responded to automatically just because the machine was confident enough in its answer. Now, as it normally happens in the real world, customers are very unpredictable. So once in a while, actually quite often, you get customers that ask questions that are very complex, sometimes confusing even for a human to understand. So the machine will process it, but if it's not certain about the answer, instead of sending the wrong answer or instead of coming back with a generic reply like, hey, customer, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you rephrase that for me? Instead of doing that, it'll still make a suggestion to your agents, but the confidence score will be lower. And it will now be up to your agents to figure out, is this a suggestion that they want to approve? Is this something they want to personalize? Or is it something they want to ignore and just come up with their own answer that they like better? And the machine just as well we'll learn from this through the continuous online learning process. So it's a seamless interaction between the human and the machine that allows us to create automation inside of the customer service operation without bearing the significant risks of being wrong in a case where it would really upset the customer, as we've seen with scripted bots and other systems out there. So those are the three things we do well, which is the prediction and automated filling of metadata. It is the suggestion of answers for agents for approval, and finally the automation of those answers to the end customer, provided they exceed the confidence score. Now, moving right along, a few examples of how this type of software looks inside of your agent consoles. I've given a few examples of this working on Salesforce Service Cloud. So all of the items that are highlighted or circled in orange are actually things that are normally done by a human agent, which takes time, and instead are now automatically predicted and pre-filled by the AI algorithm. So all of the drop-down menus on the left-hand side and even the answers on the right side, which are being suggested to the agent with a confidence score for approval. This also works on channels like live chat. So this is the implementation we've done on a software called Live Agent, which is part of the Salesforce Service Cloud family, which focuses on bringing fantastic chat capabilities to customer service. And what we do is, in the same exact fashion as we do it for email, we train our models on historical chat logs, and whenever new chats come in from customers, let's say from their mobile device or from a chat window on a website, the system is capable of assigning all the metadata and suggesting answers. And similarly, there's a confidence threshold which allows the agent manager to determine at what point of confidence can chat messages be automated to the customer versus suggested to the agent. Another example of this software working inside the Zendesk support environment is quite similar. When an incoming message is, let's say an email is coming in, all of the items on the left in orange are pretty mundane tasks that are normally done by agents, things like tagging and filling out the custom fields and custom objects like type, priority, and most customers actually have many others that their agents have to fill manually. All of that stuff can be predicted by the machine learning algorithm for one simple reason. It's been done thousands of times before, and the machine has been trained on it. And similarly, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see suggested answers on the Zendesk world in the format of macros or historical answers. So even in a case when a customer or a company doesn't have macros or canned responses or approved templates for the machine to recommend, we can dive significantly deeper into the history of the conversations and actually suggest to the agent an appropriate answer to a question that was given by an agent, a peer of theirs, sometime in the past that led to a good CSAT score. So the idea of using both approved answers as well as historical answers really brings a lot of depth to the system and helps agents ultimately save time and provide a more consistent experience. Apart from Salesforce and Zendesk, there's a number of other platforms out there that are quite popular. All of them can be accessed via our APIs, and we have prioritized the ones which we want to build off-the-shelf integrations for, but we also have a set of APIs which can be accessed to integrate this with pretty much any console that's out there. Finally, kind of to the fun stuff, I want to share a couple of case studies. So there's a lot of talk these days about AI transforming contact centers and the future of AI. The reality is that future is actually happening right now, and there's lots of companies out there already that have implemented machine learning and AI products into their contact center. And I wanted to share just a few of those. So for context, we launched this product in its stable state at the end of last year in December. Today, our software powers over 25 different contact centers, including some of the most innovative and effective contact centers in their respective industries. And I just want to highlight a few of those examples right here and now. A company called Magoos, based in Berkeley, California, is one of the leaders in the online education space. So they do online tutoring for students that prepare for the GMAT and the GRE. Now, Some of the challenges they have is that in their team of 46 agents, most of them are actually remote, so there's really limited opportunity for hands-on training. They still do a nice job with it remotely, but it's important for them to have a very, very consistent methodology for serving their students when it comes to their service requests. And they were looking for a few items. On the Zendesk platform, they were looking for the tickets to be automatically tagged by our machine learning software so that these qualified tutors who are really much more useful answering questions about the GRE than they are in tagging questions that come in, so they no longer have to do it. And the second thing was to empower them to see suggested macros and suggested historical responses to help them facilitate and expedite the process of answering the students' questions to begin with. So we have done this implementation, and as a result, they now use our software in 59% of all of their tickets, and the average accuracy of our AI models we're seeing across the board for this company is 92%, which is quite high for the industry. They were recently profiled in the New York Times for actual agents using machine learning algorithms to improve on how they do their job, and one of the quotes that they've contributed was that they have reduced their queue of customer requests by half, and the software has made their team's goal of responding to every customer within 24 hours more manageable. So it helps them reduce the queue, it helps them hit their SLA, and it helps the agents have a more fulfilling experience themselves. We'll send links to this New York Times piece afterwards because there's some really interesting reading other than this case that you can see there about machine learning working in the enterprise or in the mid-market. The second example I wanted to highlight is one of our airline customers. It's KLM, Royal Dutch Airlines. I referenced them previously. They are one of the innovators in the space. They've been the first to build a chatbot on Facebook Messenger that allows you to get your boarding pass automatically through Messenger. And if your gate has been changed, you can see that update in your Messenger in real time so you don't go to the wrong gate. And they've built that chatbot themselves. Now, as part of that process, they opened up the messaging channel for all sorts of conversations, not just automated boarding passes and gate changes. And as a result, they got that spike of volume, which we talked about earlier. And to deal with the spike of volume, they did not want to sacrifice the personal touch of all of their agents that have been trained to represent the brand. So they've merged the DigitalGenius software together with their human agent team, over 350 agents using this, and our software is supporting just over 54% of all of their cases on Salesforce. This software was deployed in multiple languages. In this case, it was English and Dutch. That is one of the advantages of a machine learning approach. We talk about chatbot platforms that let you script your own bot, but we often neglect to mention language. So anytime you script your bot in, let's say, English, translating that chatbot automatically to French is not a straightforward process. And more often than not, you actually have to get a native speaker who has linguistic training to script a new bot in the new language that you want to use. Now, compare that with the advantages of a pure machine learning approach, which lets you simply ingest all of the historical data sets and historical chat logs and email transcripts in whatever language they were in, converting them to mathematical word vectors and training this model based on the statistics. So in a way, machine learning will not discriminate against any language, and there's only one prerequisite. A company must have enough historical chat logs in that language that they'd like to use in order for the training to be effective, and that's really important. To date, we've deployed in, I think, over a dozen languages. Among them is English, Dutch, French, Arabic, and a number of other languages. So another quick example is a company called Joybird. They manufacture furniture on demand. It's a very nice company in Los Angeles. And for them, they have a very small team, just 12 agents on Zendesk. And these agents are working mostly in-house. They're not outsourced. And what's important is to keep these agents as efficient as possible with their time, because a small team is handling a not-so-small number of customer requests. And what we've done for them is we've implemented our automatic AI tagging as well as the macro suggestions. And as a result, they've seen some outcomes. DigitalGenius now supports over 95% of all of their tickets that they get in the contact center. They've seen an over 300% increase in macro adoption. This is an important statistic because macros are primarily used to ensure consistency and improve the speed at which agents can respond to questions. But when you have macros, you can ensure that your answers will be more consistent. Your new agents that just joined have some guidance around how to answer questions, and they can answer those questions much faster using the macros rather than typing answers from scratch or searching knowledge bases and copy pasting things out of Word documents. These are all things we have seen in the contact center. And by helping them increase their macro adoption 300%, it's really helped them drive a lot of efficiency and speed back to their operation, empowering their agents to focus on what they consider their number one priority, which is their customers. The graph on the left also shows continuous AI learning and improvement. Let's not forget an advantage of machine learning over the traditional rule-based systems is that they learn on the fly. Every time an agent interacts with the system and takes an action, the system should learn from this, and over time the model should get better, and the amount of tickets and the quality of those suggestions should increase, which is something that we've seen across our customers, including this one. And finally, one of our most recent customers, Travelbird. Clearly, we have a thing for companies that have bird in their name. They are one of the leading package tour providers in Europe. They provide fantastic tours and travel experiences for people in a very personalized way. So again, without sacrificing the personal human touch, they wanted to increase the efficiency in their contact center. And they were actually they were posed with a decision. The cost of this quickly scaling operation, because their business is growing, they had to figure out a way to make the cost equation work. They were thinking about possibly outsourcing their team to another part of the world. And while that works just fine and works very well for some companies, in this example, the personal touch that they really value was one that they really needed to leverage, and the team of agents they had in-house was already trained to provide that type of high-level service to their customers. So they've implemented DigitalGenius both as a way to make that team more efficient, but also to prevent having to outsource, in which in their case was not the first option that they wanted to go with. And by doing this, they actually were able to maintain some of the jobs. So there's a lot of talk these days in the media about artificial intelligence taking over jobs in the contact center. And the reality is that we've seen this before. Back in the Industrial Revolution, when the assembly line workers were pretty much overnight wiped out by robots that were doing their jobs, we've seen that happen, and things are a little bit different today. The first thing that's different is that these machine learning algorithms are not really automating the repetitive manual labor, but what they're doing is they're attempting to help and automate some of the repetitive intelligent labor. And the algorithms are in no way strong enough to replace a human today, but what they are good at as being a support tool for those individuals to do their job better. I like to think of it as a calculator for an accountant, which is pretty much a must-have, or an Excel model for a banker, which they wouldn't be able to do much without. And similarly here, we believe that every agent should have their own machine learning algorithm that helps them do their job. And taking that algorithm away from them is really like relegating them back to the days of paper and pencil. So the best agents, the happiest agents, the most in-demand agents are going to be ones that in the future and starting now are able to interact with these AI systems in a way that lets them have a personal conversation which creates value with their customers without doing the repetitive, mundane work. As we've seen here with Travelbird, the AI models are providing just over 94% accuracy. They've seen a 200% increase of macro usage, and they're just now calculating metrics around their AHT reduction and savings. But over the course of these narratives, these few customers we highlighted, the message is pretty commonly clear. It's the fact that they are implementing AI first and foremost to support their teams, to make them more efficient, to offload the repetitive work from their day-to-day, to make them happier and drive their employee satisfaction scores so that their operation can continue being strong and ultimately driving success to their customers. So that is our view on the space. There's been a lot of insights we've gathered from pretty much living inside contact centers for the last 3.5 years with one question on our mind, which was, how do we make machine learning practical and useful in a business environment of a contact center? And we've gathered these insights and grateful for the opportunity to share it with you on this web call today. I'm going to open up the floor to some questions and answers. I hope that Titus, our moderator, can read off a few of the ones that are interesting, and we can sort of wrap up after that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mikhail, for this very insightful presentation. It's amazing to see what's out there in the world of AI, and seeing practical applications inside contact centers is very important for the industry moving forward. And seeing humans and AI working together is a big reassurance for the way things are developing. Now I'm going to switch over to questions. We have a few questions from the audience. I'm going to take the logistics one off the bat here. We will share the materials and the recording after this session. Will be live on Bright Talk, and we also send a follow-up email to those who registered. So don't worry about that. And then another question that I found interesting is someone asked about us working with any fashion or luxury companies. And Mikhail, I'm going to let you answer that one.
Yep. So fashion luxury is an industry that's very interesting. It depends more specifically what type of what type or what level of luxury. AI in our case won't be helping you on the runway. Not at this point, but we are working with a number of CPG companies which consider some of their products to be in the luxury category. Without naming names, these are companies that produce, luxury makeup and certain products, that help with hygiene. So not quite fashion, but definitely of the luxury category. On the fashion side, Joybird was an example that I provided, and what they're doing is, they're building customized furniture on demand, and I'm pretty certain that some of that furniture can be ordered with some luxury fabrics and some branded, high-level type features to them. So in that sense, we are, but hopefully that's a good enough answer for that particular question. In general, I would say that the companies that can benefit most from AI software today in the contact center are ones that have some historical data in terms of chat logs and email transcripts, which they could leverage to train the algorithm, and ones that have some agents still working in the contact center so that this seamless experience can exist. Because we're not here to replace your agents altogether. We're here to give them the tools to be better at their job. So loosely, the definition of a perfect partner or customer for us is one that is growing with their volumes growing, open to using new channels of conversation with their customers, and wanting to get the costs of the operation under control, and has enough historical data for us to train the models with.
Awesome. Next questions are around supporting voice, phone, and how do we support traditional contact centers or speech-enabled chat? Is that something that we do right now, or is that on our roadmap?
That's a fair question. That's a fair question. So there are kind of two things happening in the contact center today, the way we've seen it in terms of channels. One is that voice-based customer support and service still accounts for the greatest majority of all volume that happens in most contact centers. Like sometimes it's in the 90% or more. What we've seen, however, with the voice channel is that it's staying fairly stable, and in some cases it's even decreasing. And so comparing that with the text-based channels like email support, live chat, popular platforms for mobile messaging like Facebook Messenger, Telegram, and WeChat, these are all growing at a tremendous pace. They're growing so rapidly that they're not yet reaching near the voice volume proportion, but they're growing so much faster, and so much more attention is being put towards those channels because a lot of companies believe that that's their future. And the reason they believe it's the future for the most part is because they need to go where their customers are. And you can certainly see the trends of different generations. In fact, many different generations are migrating towards the digital channels, including text, including messaging, and including social and chat. So we decided to prioritize those channels first because they're the ones that are growing the fastest, and that's where we felt we could create the most value for our customers and our partners. But we do have some prototypes that have been done on voice, and we do that through transcribing voice logs and then feeding them into our models. However, we do not have a system in production in GA that is doing anything for voice. So all of our focus for the last year and a half has been on the text-based channels, which we feel are the ones that are growing the fastest.
Okay, thank you. And there's another question about infrastructure. Somebody asked about us integrating with CRM platforms, but not with contact centers. And is there any reason why?
just to make sure I understood the question, you'd like to know about the underlying infrastructure of the contact centers?
So what I'm understanding from this question is whether, like, why we chose to integrate with CRMs but not with the contact center software. It's probably connected to the voice versus text.
I understand that question. I understand. So through our APIs, we can make the integration happen to different kinds of software. We've chosen the traditional CRM like a Salesforce, Service Cloud, or even Zendesk, which is a ticketing tool that's used by tens of thousands of customers, and in Salesforce's case, I think more than 100,000 customers. We've chosen them because of the ease of deployment. Right now, if anyone wanted to adopt artificial intelligence into their contact center and the partner that they were looking at asked them to replace their existing software altogether, I think both sides would have very much an uphill battle. This happens for many, tactical reasons. One is that most of the software that exists inside these contact centers has already been licensed by the company, probably in a multi-year agreement. So replacing that and tearing it out to replace with another really is not a practical process that can happen quickly. So instead, we've chosen to actually become partners with these platforms and, in a way, help leverage and help them make their existing customers more successful. So we're excited about our partnerships with Salesforce, where we happen to be a partner on their App Exchange. We're excited about our partnership with Zendesk, where they have a special program for machine learning companies. And those channels seem to be the ones that are adopting the fastest, just because we have off-the-shelf integrations and people can install the app very quickly and get it up and running and get value from it as quickly as possible. The other platforms out there we've obviously discussed with and have some conversations ongoing, and it's either about making the APIs connected with them or building an off-the-shelf integration, and those are some of the questions we work on the product side.
Awesome. Cool. Switching gears to use cases a little bit. I have a question here from someone asking about if we come across any B2B use cases.
Yep. Good question. So I would say the split right now is about 80-20. 80% of our customers are B2C companies blended across mid-market companies with small teams of agents, let's say 40 or 50, and enterprise customers with hundreds of agents, perhaps thousands. That's on the B2C side. On the B2B side, we do have 20% of our customers. Mostly these are focused in the financial services industry. So there's a number of B2B companies that provide services to other companies, and there the stakes are very high because every customer service conversation or interaction might not lead to you losing an individual user or an individual customer, but sometimes it could lead to losing a contract altogether with that company. So that's why B2B contact centers really value some of the processes around consistency, and we all know companies have very robust knowledge bases that are very difficult to search, and if you have this machine learning algorithm which is automatically suggesting the right information or the right answers to the agent, then it saves them a lot of time and ensures consistency. So that recovered time can be put towards reinforcing relationships with your B2B customers rather than fighting fires every moment.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. What about natural language generation? There's a question from someone asking about if that's something we're moving towards, if we're looking at that at all.
I've understood the question to be about natural language generation. So the general idea is that you can use a generative AI model to construct answers and messages pretty much one word at a time. And this generative model process usually exposes you to a few unwanted risks, especially in the contact center. So I think for the folks on the call, probably most of you, if not every single one of you, have heard about examples of generative model-based chatbots going wrong on Twitter and in other places when they start learning from all of the wonderful things that people say to them on Twitter and repeating them back in the most profane manner possible. So we've seen this happen several times, and obviously we don't want that to happen inside of the customer service operation, which is why we actually do not use generative language models on the front end, meaning that our machine will not be spitting out answers that it just out of nowhere came up with, and part of that is to protect the customer and to protect the brand. However, some of the natural language generation does take place under the hood, sort of in our proprietary engine. There's part of the process that deals with that, but we don't expose that to the end consumer for that specific reason of protecting the brand's reputation. There is going to come a time in the future when generative models evolve to be a lot more resilient and a lot more, I would say, predictable. And for this reason, we will be looking and continuing to look in that space as we continue adding new features.
Awesome. I think that now is the right time to prioritize the question about how are we different from other NLP companies? Because we're talking about the natural language generation, natural language processing, and then our approach and how is that different from others out there?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I think NLP, natural language processing, is quite a generic term. It talks about just processing natural language by a machine in a way that can that can be productive and it can be useful. And there are some methodologies for doing this on the technology side. So while some NLP companies are using pure linguistics, taxonomies, and sort of techniques from the linguistics world and computational linguistics world, we're using frameworks from the machine learning and deep learning world. And under the hood, the tech is completely different, but the outcomes are different too. The first outcome is that machine learning algorithms are much more attuned to learning from ongoing interactions. So our training process actually doesn't stop when you ingest the historical data. Remember we talked about ingesting the historical chat logs? That's only half of the training. So by doing this historical ingestion process, you train a model that's good enough to put in front of your agents. But that doesn't mean this model is always going to stay the way it is. So as your agents begin interacting with this model, approving suggested answers, rejecting them, personalizing them, the machine continues to learn. And this ongoing continuous learning process allows the machine learning model to become better. And in this way, it significantly exceeds what can be done with a traditional NLP framework or even an expert system. There is some learning that happens in the expert systems, but it's not as granular as it would be with a deep learning methodology. So that's one thing. Another thing to consider is chatbots. We've seen, like last year, 2016 was the year of the chatbot. Facebook made a major announcement that it was opening up a bot framework. They've acquired a company called Wit.ai. Google later on, earlier this year, acquired a company called API.ai. Many of these companies are based on, providing you with a platform where you could script your own bot, essentially. And they've made really great progress in making it easy for you to script your own bot, but you kind of still have to do it and you still have to maintain it yourself. So the difference between our product and this one is that our product leverages the fact that you already have historical logs, so no one has to script anything up front, and the fact that you already have tens or dozens or hundreds or thousands, some of you, agents sitting inside your contact centers doing their job every single day, and it would be a shame not to take advantage of the fact that they are actually conducting this work day to day and can contribute the additional learning to the algorithm, enabling it to be better over time. So that's a significant difference. And another point on chatbots is that they are very effective when it comes to narrow use cases. Things like providing you with a boarding pass on the day of your flight or telling you that your gate location has been changed is functionality that ultimately creates value in your day-to-day life. Ordering a pizza with a chatbot could be interesting and sometimes even more effective than calling and waiting. Telling what the weather is in London today with a chatbot is just a basic natural language query connected to a weather API, which spits out the weather in whatever part of the world you want, right? But what it's not good for is customer service. It's not good for customer service because it doesn't learn consistently. It's scripted up front, so it's very limiting. It can give the wrong answers at the wrong time, which could be damaging to your brand. And ultimately, the chatbot will not be able to handle the end-to-end customer service experience. Because when your customer comes to you, they're not looking for an answer to their question, right? First and foremost, they're looking for a solution. They're looking for a resolution. And so machine learning is very well adapted to doing that, is helping a customer go from problem to resolution, not just from question to answer, which can be done with an NLP system. Finally, our framework can work together with chatbots, We have several examples where that's worked really well, where a chatbot is used on the front end to try to collect some information or to try to answer some basic scripted questions, but inevitably most of the chatbots will fail most of the time, or let's say most of the chatbots will fail some of the time, and depending on how valuable some of the time is for you in terms of your brand, then you have to really think about how much of the chatbot functionality versus human plus AI functionality you want to use. But we have experiences where we've built our system into chatbots and chatbots into our system to create a whole 360 approach.
Cool, awesome. That was a very comprehensive explanation. Thank you for that. Now, to chime into the last part of your explanation, is someone asked about what are some measures of success in AI for customer service deployments? Would it be a level of confidence, accuracy? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, there are two important categories of KPIs to look out for when you're thinking about machine learning for your contact center. The first category of KPIs are the things that have to do with the AI itself. So what are the confidence levels at which the AI is producing answers? Is that confidence level improving over time? Is the accuracy of the algorithm improving over time? How consistent is the machine at providing the right answer or the right suggestion at the very top as the first suggestion to your agent? How is automation working and how quickly is it picking up speed? How effective is the tagging mechanism and sort of what measures can you do when it comes to the underlying ML? And in our case, we expose a lot of that to our customers through an AI dashboard where they can track exactly how the AI is performing over time. And in fact, that is some of the information they count on when deciding about the right time to turn on automation, the right automation confidence threshold to set up, and so on. So the first category of KPIs for this is looking at the AI itself, the learning, the confidence, and so forth. The other category is important, is the traditional customer service metrics. It's the things that we have to look at every single day. It's the things that, people walk into a room and say, what's your AHT? What's your FRT? What's your FCR? It's all these acronyms that we've memorized. We know what they mean, and we're trying to drive them down. In some cases, we're trying to improve them, as in the case of CSAT and ESAT. So what's important with AI is to have a benchmark of what those statistics, what those measures were before you implemented a system like DigitalGenius, and then measuring it in the 30-day intervals after you implemented DigitalGenius. And so those are things that you should really look out for, is to make sure you can track how the AI is learning, and we expose that through our dashboard, but then also to do a comparison study of the traditional customer service metrics that you normally use, like average handling time.
Awesome. I know we're getting close to the end of the session, so I'm going to bundle 3 questions about implementation together. And the questions are about basically if we offer an on-prem and a SaaS public cloud option, what is the cost of creating a chatbot like KLM or Travelbird, the tool for Travelbird, and a general question about how implementation looks like for an AI product like this.
Got it. Okay. Before I get into that, because that's 3 questions in one, I'd just like to say thank you and how grateful we are to have so many participants and viewers on this webinar. I'm just watching the numbers spike, and thank you all for joining in case anybody drops off early. We really appreciate it. Now, to get to the questions, yes, our product is a cloud-based product, so We've gone through significant amounts of security integrations, licensing, certifications, and things that make this a truly secure product to be used in the cloud. We see trend-wise this is where a lot of the world is moving. We don't focus on on-prem deployments at the moment. We don't rule them out completely, but we certainly don't focus on them. We stay on SaaS. The second question was around price. And we have a pretty straightforward pricing model. We use a SaaS pricing, which is calculated at a per agent per month fee for having this product inside of your contact center. So if you're already using Zendesk or Salesforce or one of these other systems, you're probably already paying a licensing fee for those agents. Our idea is that by adding our product on top of the existing one, you can actually reduce the number of FTEs you're going to have to hire as your company scales or as you go through the seasonal spikes that are common in B2C companies. You'll be able to essentially save on the cost of labor, which is significantly higher than the cost of licenses. So while obviously we support your existing agents. Because of the fact that we support your existing agents, we also charge in a similar fashion on a per month per agent licensing fee. And we also have a setup fee, and the setup fee pretty much goes to doing the integration if it's for some reason needs to be customized, and doing the initial training. And this process, leading into the third question, can take a different amount of time. So if you are already using a more, I would say, a system like Zendesk, the fastest Zendesk implementation we've ever done was 48 hours. So from the moment that a customer signed up for Digital Genius until the moment that their agents were already seeing AI-powered suggestions on their Zendesk screen, it took just under 48 hours. The machine learning process itself takes only 4.5 hours, which means that once you install the app, the system will start training on the logs, and that'll take about 4.5, 5 hours. After that, it's the reason it takes 48 hours, not 5 hours, is because there's a few other elements that we must do, things related to training the managers, onboarding the new agents. We usually provide a comprehensive startup pack, which is like an onboarding experience for your agents where they can really see what this thing's going to do for them, and the managers so they can see how to administer it, how to keep track of it, and how to really leverage it for the best valued outcomes. The longest implementations we've done have been weeks long. I'm talking like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and the reasons for that are that some of the more complex enterprise customers we have typically use a system integrator to administer their existing agent console. So the system integrator usually has a deployment schedule where they have a sandbox environment and a production environment, and Digital Genius gets slotted into one of those time slots, and our app gets pushed to the client's contact center via the system integrator, and that sometimes takes weeks on end. And so that's kind of the variety of deployment timelines. It really depends on how big your system is and how complex it is, and whether it requires the help of a system integrator or not. Historically, we've never had to use a system integrator on Zendesk. On Salesforce, maybe 40% of the time there's a system integrator involved for the complex enterprise customers.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mikhail, for this presentation. We are now officially out of time. And I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone for participating, for the great questions you've asked, for the amazing feedback you sent. We are very grateful for that. And we would like to invite you to our next webinar series. Stay tuned, check your inboxes. We will be sending out invites pretty soon.
Great. Thank you, Titus. And for anyone that has follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out either via our website at digitalgenius.com, or you can direct to our email, my first name at digitalgenius.com. I'll be able to get back to you with the answers. And we're going to provide all the presentation materials. And hopefully you guys have a great day, and this was helpful as you think about your strategy, either improving upon or making your contact center operation more efficient, or just exploring the world of AI for contact centers, or maybe actually in the AI space yourself, trying to check out what other companies are doing. So whatever the reason that brought you here, thanks a lot, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you.
Thank you.